It's okay. Keep going.
It's an indescribable experience. You know, you'd have to be there. You'd have to experience it to appreciate it. But nevertheless, they put me back in the car. We went up to Liverpool. The prison's called Walton Prison, and it's the only prison in Liverpool. And thankfully enough, because it's so old, the prison was so old and dilapidated, they're closing it down. So it was half empty, which means there was loads of free cells everywhere. So they put me on a landing where I had like 5 empty cells that side, 5 empty cells this side. And the prison was half empty. And luckily it was filled with local, like kind of petty criminals, like Scouser petty criminals from the local area. So it was like 95% whites. I think Liverpool and Hull are the whitest prisons in the country. So no Muslim gangs, no nothing like that. So I was very relieved, and I managed to have some semblance for 5 weeks of like a normal prison life, if we put it that way. But by that time, when you're in prison, you get like, I don't know, say like £15 a week to spend on snacks from what they call a canteen, but it's actually a sheet of paper where you can tick off certain snacks and then they get delivered to you and it comes off your account. So I'd like, 15 quid on my account every week. Well, a razor and shaving foam come to like 12 quid. And I didn't really want to spend all that money out of my precious £15 a week on a razor. So I ended up growing a beard like this. I look like a Muslim convert. And so when I was in Liverpool, my beard was quite big. So no one recognised me because I had this beard. But yeah, so no one recognised me. There was no trouble. There's no grief, no issues. I actually, I had so much free space either side of me. The only time I really had my guard up was when you had to go to the shower, because the showers are communal. You go into like, a communal shower area, and that's always a vulnerable weak spot for any prisoner. But I went through the 5 weeks. It was just very quiet, very peaceful. And then I was released. But on the day I was released, I actually got my father to drive from Kent. So I rang him up and said, look, I'm being released in 3 days. I need you to be outside to pick me up. Of course I will, son. So on my day of my release, I'm excited. I'm going home. I'm being released. 9 weeks of solitary confinement. I've been attacked. I've been, interviewed by the police. I've been moved around like musical chairs. Finally getting released. So they process me and they kick me out, and I get released. I'm walking out with my bag in my tracksuit, and then I noticed something odd as I'm walking out towards the entrance of the prison or the exit. I noticed these 3 cars on the side of the road, and as I'm walking towards them, I'd say 13 to 15 unmarked men come out, not with uniforms, just men jump out of these cars. I'm thinking, what's going on here? They come over to me, 13, maybe 15 SO15 counter-terrorism command officers had intercepted me just as I was being released. My father was just round the corner, a couple of hundred yards, waiting to pick me up. And there's me. I'm surrounded by 15 officers. I said, what the hell have I done now? They said, I'm sorry, you can't go home. You're being taken to a bail hostel. What are you talking about? I've served half my sentence. Piss off and leave me alone. No, Mr. Golding, you're being detained. You're being taken to a bail hostel. You need to live in a bail hostel for the next 4 weeks. I had no choice. There's 15 of them. And these are Britain's elite counter-terrorism officers. And I've been pretty much flung in prison for leafleting, and they'd ambush me, and they're taking me to a bail hostel. Now, these bail hostels, they exist for one reason and one reason only. When you have people like murderers and armed robbers and serious criminals, they've done like 15 years in prison. When they come out, they might not have anywhere to go, and they need to climatize to life on the outside of a prison. So serious criminals get put in bail hostels so they can adjust. People who've served 9 weeks for leafleting do not get put in bail hostels. But nevertheless, there's 3 carloads of anti-terrorism police. They ambush me. My father's around the corner thinking, what the hell is going on here? The poor sod sat there for like hours on end until he went into the prison and asked them, where is my son? They said, he's been released hours ago. Well, where is he then? My father had no choice but to drive all the way back from Liverpool to Kent without me because he had no clue what was going on. So these SO15 counter-terrorism command officers drove me all the way to West London, and they put me in a bail hostel, which is kind of like, you imagine a big detached mansion house in Ealing, a really posh area of Ealing in West London. Now, Ealing, I know myself, is multicultural. It's very left-wing, very liberal and trendy. I thought this is not a great area for me to be mooching around in. They put me into this bail hostel, and it was all about extending the control over me. So they gave me strict conditions. While I was there, I couldn't have a phone that was internet enabled. I had to have one of them ancient, Nokia 3310s that I could ring people, but that's it. If I got caught accessing the internet in any way, shape or form, back in prison. And there was, inside this bail hostel, there was CCTV. I had to sign on twice a day at 12 midday and 6 p.m. So I couldn't travel too far away because I had to be back to sign in. It was all about controlling me for that little bit longer. I'd done my 9 weeks in prison. I was a free man, but they found a way to extend that control over me to neutralize me for a little bit longer. But yeah, so my time was spent. I managed to get some of my family to come up almost every day and take me out. We'd done a bit of shopping, went to lunch, and just did normal things. But I was neutralized for an extra 4 weeks. And then when my time came to an end in the bail hostel, I was finally allowed to go home. And I went back before you get sent to prison, which you think might be a long time. I was renting a house, but I thought I can't really be paying the rent while I'm in prison. So I got rid of the house. I had no home. I got rid of it all. I got rid of all my responsibilities because I thought I might be in prison for a long time here. So I got rid of everything. So when I was released from the bail hostel, I went back to my mum's for a bit till I got back on my feet. I was back at my mother's for 2 days, and I started going back to my boxing gym in South East London. And while I was at my boxing gym, my mother's ringing me frantically ringing me. And obviously, once I finished, I'm like, what's going on? Why are you ringing me 20 times? The police are here looking for you. The police have been looking for you. They want to arrest you again. What have I done this time? My probation officer, literally 2 days I was out, 2 bloody days. And the police tried to rearrest me on some trumped up stuff that I was planning on traveling to Northern Ireland for the 12th of July celebrations. Well, if I wanted to travel to Northern Ireland, what the hell's it got to do with you lot? But it was just about control, grinding me down and disrupting my activities. It didn't stop me though, because eventually the probation finished. And eventually they realized they couldn't do anything. They locked me up in all these different processes. I had a post-sentence supervision order, which meant that I had to, if I wasn't sleeping at my mother's house, I had to let the police know where I was going and where I was sleeping. It was just layer upon layer upon layer of control and regulation and all these different conditions. They just kept trying to trip me up. They even re-prosecuted me to try and put me back in prison for 2 weeks. But the judges, to their credit, and these are magistrates who are usually, bent as a 9-bob note, they're very politically biased magistrates because they're the lowest rung of the legal ladder. They're just cowboys at that level. So the probation actually prosecuted me again to try and put me back in for 14 days. But the magistrates took a look at the evidence and said, this guy's done nothing wrong, and they threw it out. My probation officer actually said to me, look, I've got superiors who are telling me what to do. I knew this was going nowhere. This is nonsense. But eventually I managed to, get out of their clutches and remove myself from their tentacles. And I managed to rebuild Britain first. Facebook had been taken down because I forgot to say, while I was in prison in Elmley, before I was attacked, I was watching normal, because you only get normal TV in a prison. So I was watching anything you can to keep you sane. I was watching Prime Minister's Questions. I think it was Theresa May was the Prime Minister at the time. But I'm watching, you can imagine my shock. I'm watching this, Prime Minister's Questions, eating my lunch. And all of a sudden, a Labour MP jumped up. So I'm only paying half attention. A Labour MP jumped up. Will the House join me in congratulating Facebook on suspending the hateful accounts of the far-right group Britain First? And also, I've spat all my food out everywhere. And I'm, what? And I'm in a blind panic. I'm like, wait, because it's a difficult feeling to explain, but you spend years of hard work building up a huge social media following. We had more followers on our Facebook than all the other political parties combined at Westminster. We had a huge organic following, the biggest social media following of the far right that's ever been assembled. And I'm in the prison cell and I'm watching it on TV, and all the MPs start bursting out with applause, saying, yes, they've taken it down. Britain First has been suspended. But yeah, that was a difficult pill to swallow, considering, I thought, when we get out of prison, what are we going to do? Because that was our main platform. That was our main outlet to the outside world. And it was huge. We were reaching like 10, 15 million people a week with our Facebook page, and it was all gone just like that.
So did the way they treat you increase your resolve to keep going with the activism?
Of course, yes. People like me have got a bit of a screw loose, I would imagine. We're not built like other people. So yeah, I can only speak for myself, but I thrive on this sort of thing because it confirms to me, I ask myself the question, if you were irrelevant, if what you were doing was not effective, then quite frankly, they'd leave you alone. They'd ignore you. But you must be making an impact because they're terrorizing you. I've been arrested. I keep count of these sort of things. I've been arrested over 20 times in my political career. I've been prosecuted over 10 times. I've been to court 33 times. And I've been in 3 different prisons. And there's terrorists in prison serving life sentences for plotting to chop my head off. I've had lots and lots of death threat warnings from the police. So yeah, they've absolutely subjected to me to most horrendous persecution over decades to try and silence me and shut me up. But that confirms to me, all I can deduce from that is that, well, you're obviously doing something right. You're obviously pushing the right buttons, because otherwise they'd ignore you. They wouldn't bother with you.
So
if they see you as a threat,
what year did you get released?
2018.
And the only social media platform that's allowed you to go back on is X?
Yes. So what we were operating for a long time with sock puppet accounts on a lot of social media. So we'd create an account in the name of Sean Atwood, and we'd just start accumulating friends and so on, start posting Britain First videos. But then it would get closed down, so we'd do it again. So we were doing vigilante renegade kind of stuff for a while on social media. And then, of course, Elon Musk purchased X, and the rest is history. Eventually, we were allowed back on. I think we've got about 500,000 followers. My account, Britain First, and Ashley Simons, over 500,000 followers. The problem we have with X, though, it's nowhere near as effective as Facebook in a British context, because the vast majority of people who are on X are American. There's hardly any British people on it, to be fair, outside of the political kind of circles in Britain. So I've asked my mother, my father, my aunties, uncles, friends. None of them are on X. They're all on Facebook. Unfortunately, Facebook is continually banning us. See, when Trump was elected, Zuckerberg actually came out and made a big speech about talk about free speech and free expression. Everything's changed now. Facebook is going to be just like X. Okay, we'll put that to the test. We opened up a fan page. It got 20,000 followers very quickly, suspended. So we opened up another one. It got like 3,000 followers, suspended. So yeah, it's just Zuckerberg is still a globalist toad who's censoring everyone. But the problem with X is, you can only reach so many people in Britain. And I use the adverts platform on X to actually analyze people's accounts. So, because, you can do targeting with your adverts. So if I want to target all of Tommy Robinson's followers who live in the United Kingdom, it tells me how many there are. And it's quite shocking. 80% of Tommy's account is American, 80%. Same with mine, same with Ashley, same with Britain First, everyone's. It's 80% American. And then you look at the British contingent and you notice that the vast majority of them are left wing. And that's a hangover from the old days when everyone who was right wing used to get censored and they used to go elsewhere. So the British population on X is still a lot of Muslims, but overwhelmingly left wing. So it's quite sad, really, but it's the only platform we have, but it's not really effective in reaching the British masses. We need to get onto Facebook. That's where the British people, in the majority, have their social media interactions.
So how does Britain First function now?
Well, it was actually yesterday we surpassed 21,000 paid up members, which if you take, because I don't believe Reform are a right-wing patriotic, or I don't believe that they're the solution to the problems we have in this country. I believe they're controlled opposition. Nigel Farage has said that if we confront Islam, we'll lose. He's not interested. He said he won't commit to mass deportations. He said he's not concerned, direct quote, not concerned that white British people could become a minority in the future. He's appointed a completely unknown Muslim as the chairman of his party just because he's a multimillionaire. In the last few days, we've seen some of these Bangladeshi Muslim groups all out campaigning for reform. So, and they're welcoming defectors from the Liberal Democrats and Labour, left-wing councillors, left-wings, and so on. So, Reform is not a patriotic or nationalist political party. They're not on our side of the fence. They do make some noise about we're going to stop the boats, we're going to bring down the numbers of immigration, but we've heard all that nonsense from the Tories before. And Tory types never deliver. So I think that if you subtract Reform from the equation, Britain First is light years ahead of any other, whatever you want to say, right-wing, patriotic or nationalist political party in the country. In fact, I can confidently say, because I know I get fed a lot of information, of course, that every other political party on the right of politics is way below 1,000 members, and yet we've got 21,000 members. And Britain First is a household name. We have public recognition. It's faded a bit in recent years, admittedly, because we've lost that Facebook. We've lost that massive reach that we used to have, but we're still well known. And if you look at our videos, when we're up on bridges or driving our battle bus through a town centre or a high street, if you look at when we're on roundabouts with the placards, the support is overwhelming for Britain First. I'm sitting here now, if you compare us to other right-wing parties, you see behind me, I'm in our London office. We have a 2-story building in Manchester, which is our national headquarters. We have 2 purpose-built, customised battle buses with huge PA systems and retractable banners. No other party has this kind of infrastructure on the right of politics. If you subtract Reform, which are just, I believe they're just Tories 2.0, and they're being pushed relentlessly by the mass media. It was only 2 days ago they had a huge 2-page spread in the Sun. Could you imagine Britain First getting a 2-page spread in the Sun? It would cause mayhem. It would just never happen in a million years, because we are genuinely anti-establishment, whereas Reform, I believe they're just an establishment safety valve. The establishment knows that there's millions of angry voters out there, the silent majority. Those angry votes need to be neutralised. So let's roll out Nigel Farage. They'll all vote for him, and he's not a threat. So those angry votes are neutralised. So yes, we are by far, by any metric you care to mention, we are by far the largest, strongest, with the biggest resources, the best infrastructure of any right-wing political party.
Yeah, and Reform voted against investigating the grooming gangs, which was really sickened me. So what do you hope to achieve from here, Paul?
Well, if I go back to recent years, see, we fought the Electoral Commission in court for 4 years. We spent like £50,000 fighting them in the High Court to try and be registered as a political party,